The problem right now is there's a huge push for females, particularly in that sort of perimenopausal, menopausal, lift heavy shit. In order to get your bone density, you've got to be lifting heavy weights. And that kind of feeds, well, the powerlifting people. What I'm trying to say to people is cool your jets a little bit. If you do 10 reps hard, you're doing 10 reps really close to 80%. And you're going to get a lot of benefit for that. The bad stuff happens between 1 and 3. So I don't think I've ever seen anybody get injured in the weight room doing a 5 rep set or an 8 rep set or a 10 rep set. But I have seen some people have problems with heavy singles or heavy doubles or heavy triples. So I would call it a well-intended message. I wouldn't even say it's a good message. I'd say it's a well-intended message. And the intention of the message is that these older women need to be pushing themselves to a place that they're probably not used to going. Because if we get somebody to the point where they're close to failure for 8 to 10 repetitions, we've done what we needed to do. It doesn't need to be heavier than that.
Hey everybody, I'm your host Anthony Renna. Welcome to episode 427 of the Strength Coach Podcast. We're talking about relevant topics with top coaches in the fitness industry to help you become a better trainer, strength coach, therapist, or gym owner. We're brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. Right now, they got free shipping on orders over $75. Get your holiday shopping in. That's until December 19th. So get to that now. Also, save the dates, 3-day functional training summits. The dates, they didn't announce the lineups yet, but the dates are on. Chicago, June 18th to 20th. I'll be at that one. Long Beach, July 9th to the 11th. And Providence, August 20th to the 22nd. Check it all out at performbetter.com. Today I have on Coach Boyle. We spoke about John Wooden's do this, don't do that. Do this coaching technique, which is basically my favorite way to demonstrate something to people. I think it's really effective way to get people to understand not only the way you want them to do it, but the way not to do it. We talked about his note to female clients about lifting heavy. We talked about being contrarian and how maybe that post was a little contrarian. And also, we finished up with, is it the exercise or the pattern that matters? For the Business for Unicorns Fitness Business Power Play, Mark Fisher is going to be on. He's going to talk about the importance of humility and how that relates to behavior change and how and why you should pay attention to different environments. He's going to go over these different environments that he feels like are important. So check out businessforunicorns.com. They have a ton of free resources, not just for gym owners, but for all trainers. Here's Mark Fisher.
Business for Unicorns presents the Fitness Business Power Play. Listen in for one actionable strategy to help you build a gym and a life you love. And if you find value in today's Power Play, go to businessforunicorns.com or click the link in the show notes to access a ton of other free business building resources. So today we're going to talk about the importance of humility. What do I mean by that? Well, one thing that I think most of us understand in the game of fitness is a lot of the key of behavior change is getting in the right environment. In other words, your environment is stronger than you are, okay? So we don't have unlimited amounts of willpower and discipline if we are not set up for success. So an example of this, I think a lot of us understand, if you live in the world of fitness, well, the reality is if someone, let's say, is trying to eat better, it's going to be hard to eat better if their kitchen is full of cookies and candy and cake, and it's all just sitting out there on the counters. Every time they walk by, they're dealing with temptation, right? On the other hand, not necessarily suggesting this is the right move in all situations, but if you just don't have any of that stuff in the house, it's a lot harder to make mistakes, right? Because it's easier to do the right thing, and it gets a lot harder to do the wrong thing because now there is friction. So that's, I think, one example of the environment. But I want to talk about something that's even more subtle that has a big impact on your fitness business, and that is paying attention to your attentional environment, your social environment, and even here, I think there is real value in understanding your physical environment. So let's speak first to intentional environment. Understand at the end of the day, our ability to think creatively, to feel confident, to move forward with a kind of contagious positive attitude that is a very important piece of being a successful business owner, of impacting your clients, impacting your team. A lot of that is a function of what we're feeding our brain, right? Are we feeding our brain good, positive stuff that's moving us forward? Or are we feeding our brain things that are making us feel anxious or angry or judgmental? And please understand, by no means am I saying that you need to be a Luddite or completely get off phones or never look at the news. Listen, I think there's somebody said for wanting to know what's going on in the world. I think that's all well and good. My claim is the vast majority of people, however, are doing it in an unconscious way. They're not intentional about it, and the dose is too high, and it's causing a serious impact. Whereas if people just got disciplined about their media diet, from the podcast they consumed, the YouTube videos that they watched, the books that they read, heck, this is a great example of it. You're good for you right now. You're putting in positive inputs, of positive, helpful information. You're learning about training. You're focused on education, things that are going to help you be more effective at being in service for other people. So this stuff really, really matters. And I encourage you, if it's not something on your radar, and if you haven't done it recently, maybe take a little bit of audit of how you are choosing to input things into your brain that are coloring your mental and emotional state. Related to that, and this other one gets a little bit trickier, but your social environment matters too, right? So no secret, I am a big advocate for getting into groups of like-minded people. I spend a lot of time doing this very informally. I can't help it. I love people that love the fitness business. So I spend a lot of my time in a given week getting on the phone, and these days, even flying and driving to top gym owners to just hang out and talk shop. I just love it. I love learning from people, and I love being around people that are high energy, that are positive, that are confident, that are playing big games in the world. And I think you have the opportunity to do that as a fitness business person as well. Now, of course, the tricky thing here that everyone brings up is people will say, oh, and I get it. I'm the sum of the 5 people I spend the most time with, which, is maybe not precisely true, but I think is directionally accurate, right? And then people say like, yeah, but like, my mom is really important to me and she's really cruel, right? Okay. Well, listen, again, I'm not saying that you need to even change anything dramatically. I'm just asking to be mindful of the dose. So once again, I'm not saying you have to do anything. I'm just asking you to be intentional for you about the dose, right? And I think many of us have more power than we think about upregulating people that we want to emulate, that we want to be around, that leave us feeling great. And we have more power than we might think to put some bounds on the people that maybe are important to be in our life, but maybe are better in slightly lower doses. The last one, of course, is physical environments. Physical environments are an awesome way to, first of all, make sure that, again, you're doing the right thing. So this, I think, can be looked at in 2 ways. First, it is how you set up like your work environment. Like, are you working in the gym? Do you have an office? And I know not all of us have perfect setups, right? I live in a teeny New York City apartment, right? I get it. If you have little kids running around, that could be a challenge too. But ultimately, we're in control of where we are physically, right? Because here's the key takeaway is the environment is going to be stronger than we are. We want to be humble. We want to set ourselves up for success and not assume we can white knuckle and grit our way through less than ideal emotional, mental, intellectual inputs and in spaces that aren't supporting us in doing the things that are in line with our values and our goals. I think in addition to making sure that we have set up a space that's conducive to us getting our work done on the regular, I think we also need to spice up our life. Now, this is part of why I love in-person retreats. And I'm going to give you a little Easter egg here. Ready for your Easter egg? First person emails me at mark@businessunicorns.com. I'm going to give you 1 free ticket to a retreat next year, Business Unicorns retreat. We do 2 in-person retreats. We'll be in Atlanta in April, and then we'll be in Seattle in September. So if either of those might work for you, I'm happy to give you more details. And because you are an action taker, here's a little Easter egg. Email me, mark@businessunicorns.com, and just say, hey, Mark, I heard you on the podcast. I'd love to take you up on that free ticket. And I'll be so happy to have you there because, listen, if you're listening to this podcast and you're taking action, I want to hang out with you anyway. I'm the one that's winning, by the way. So what's so great about these events, of course, is you're getting new inputs, attentional inputs, education, inspiration. You're getting around different people that share your values, that understand what it's like to be a gym owner. And you're also in a different physical environment that's going to allow you to think differently, to get some space from your day-to-day and from your business. And invariably, it's going to leave you feeling refreshed, recharged, and excited to go back in your life and build a gym and a life you love. So that is your pro tip for today. If you want more strategies for building a gym in your life you love, go ahead, click the link in the show notes for more free resources, including the little book of gym marketing secrets. I think you're going to love it. It is a less than 30-minute read. It's super short, and it covers everything you need to know about getting more leads and more clients. You can just go to gymmarketingsecretsbook.com to get instant access to your free digital copy, or click the link in the show notes.
All right, guys, now it's time for the strengthcoach.com and MBSC.TV Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. Strengthcoach.com articles, videos, and the longest running forum in strength and conditioning and fitness. You can try it out for 7 days for free. Go to strengthcoach.com to start your free trial. Also, MBSC.TV, where you're basically a fly on the wall at MBSC. We're going to actually talk about a staff meeting, a little blurb from a staff meeting that they posted today. And that's what you get there. You get staff meetings, programs, seminars, and in-services from other top coaches. And you can try that out for 7 days for free at MBSC.TV. Coach, how you doing?
I am doing great, Ann. How are you?
All right. All right. Speaking of that MVSC clip, I just wanted, it's one of those things where you talked about, like with Coach Parker all the time, where, Mike, maybe we've said this a million times, but it's the first time people are hearing it. And one of the greatest things that I learned from you through Coach Wooden was do this, not this, do this from a coaching perspective, that style of teaching. And I think that's why you did it in your staff meeting to remind, the new people hadn't heard that. It is really one of the best, to me, ways to coach that really I think I've ever heard.
Well, Wooden was pretty successful, I think so.
Yeah.
He won a couple championships, but it's true. And I think, I'm trying to remember, I think it was Talent Code where they talked a lot about Wooden and his kind of coaching style. But yes, because right now we are really busy, which is great. We've got a ton of middle school kids, which is great. So we really have to really dial our teaching in. And so even we had another meeting today where we're talking about really the same things. And we kind of, as you said, hey, I've probably said this 100 times, but maybe not to this group. And we're just kind of trying to get them to think more demos, and that demo, like, hey, this is what I want you to do, not this, showing them kind of what the I guess the primary mistake, the mistake that's going to be made most frequently is going to be, and then going back and demoing again. And we talk about it all the time. These kids are very visual now, more than ever. I think they've always been visual, but basically these kids now were raised on screens. And so they're really going to respond well to good demonstrations. I was listening to another podcast yesterday, and it kind of made me laugh because first they started talking about kind of the walk thing, and you train the way that you ask your people to train, which I kind of think is bullshit. But then I started thinking, actually, we put a huge emphasis on our staff on being able to do the things that they want the kids to do, whether it's plyos, whether it's Olympic lift. You've got to be, I always tell them, I don't care how much you can clean, but I do care that you can clean well. You need to be able to demonstrate plyos. They need to see kind of what the stick looks like and what the bounce looks like and what the continuous looks like. And even in dynamic warm-up, they need to be able to see the right positions because the visual part is just so big for these kids.
What's interesting too is for new coaches, though, like you had pointed out, the don't do this part really does kind of have to come from a little bit of experience. It doesn't always have to come from experience from coaching so much, but coaching from at least doing it. Like, wow, where did I have a problem with this? Oh yeah, I wasn't getting my elbows up enough, or I didn't get, this move right, or I keep opening up my hips in that. So I think that's the little kind of rub with that, is that you got to have some experience with that the don't part to realize, hey, what's the big mistake here?
That's true. And maybe that's something that we could think about probably for future meetings, is maybe saying, okay, here's the don't, or the most frequent don't, or the don't I think that you should show them. Because today we talked about grip width on the bench press. We talked about wrist position and not letting kids get their wrists all floppy. There are all these things that were little things, but they're the little things that really add up and that really make the program good, is that ability to dial in all of these smaller points and get these younger kids really competent. And again, we say that all the time. The competence matters more. I said today in the meeting, they're going to get strong. Don't worry about it. That's going to happen. But will they get competent is really what matters, because we know that just sort of maturation and time and motor learning, all these things are going to take care of the strength part for us, no matter how good or how bad a job we do. But technically, that's not true. They won't get better technically just by being there if we're not drilling them on the right things.
And I think it's kind of a good segue into our next one, which was note to female clients. And although there's two different things I want to talk about here, you wrote 10 reps is still quote unquote heavy when done near failure. 10 reps is about 77% of your total one rep max. And I think, you had said no to female clients, and somebody did not call you out. She did it respectfully and kind of had a nice little conversation with you about why female clients, et cetera. And you said, no, you were really kind of going towards the way it's marketed right now to females, which is a good thing. Hey, we want to get you stronger. Let's keep lifting heavy. But what you were just trying to say, hey, be careful here. The 1 to 4 is not for everybody. But I think that's not really where you were trying to go with this. You were trying to say like, hey, you're still doing some heavy work.
Right. But I think it was both of those. I think it's exactly what you're saying, because the problem right now is there's a huge push for females, particularly in that sort of perimenopausal, menopausal, lift heavy shit. You got to, in order to get your bone density, you've got to be lifting heavy weights, and that kind of feeds the starting strength people, the powerlifting people. And what I'm trying to say to people is, cool your jets a little bit. If you do 10 reps hard, you're doing 10 reps really close to 80%, and you're going to get a lot of benefit for that. And I've said this 100 times, 1,000 times, a million times, but the bad stuff happens between 1 and 3. It just does. I don't think I've ever seen anybody get injured in the weight room doing a 5 rep set or an 8 rep set or a 10 rep set. But I have seen some people have problems with heavy singles or heavy doubles or heavy triples. So I think it's it's one of those, I would call it a well-intended message. I wouldn't even say it's a good message. I'd say it's a well-intended message. And the intention of the message is that these older women need to be pushing themselves to a place that they're probably not used to going. But what that ends up doing, we're constantly fighting against, as I said, the starting strength, that grandma powerlifter crowd, all of those people anyway. And it reinforces for a lot of those people like, oh no, see, I'm right. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And I'm looking at it very, very differently and saying, no, I don't think you are right. I think we still need to pick better, safer alternatives. And we can do those better, safer alternatives if we get somebody to the point where they're close to failure for 8 to 10 repetitions. We've done what we needed to do. It doesn't need to be heavier than that. And we'll occasionally dip into the 5 to 6 range, but I would say we spend with our adults 90% of the time between 8 and 12.
I really like the 2 reps in reserve coaching to be like, hey, look, I want you to do 10. I want you to have 2 left, but I don't want you to have 16 left. And I will do a lot of times with my Gen Pop people is I'll say last set, I'll go like, guys, let's go to failure now. It's our last set. And then I'll say, how many did you get? And they'll be like 20. I'll be like, up. We need to go up and wait because they'll look like they're struggling sometimes. They'll give the face and all that. And I'm like, the Academy Award goes to, and because they just did 20 after we did 4 or 5 rounds and they did 20. And I'm like, all right, come on, we got to go up a little bit here.
Yeah, well, that's my problem. I think the rep and reserve thing is literally reserved for good lifters. If you're a good lifter, if I look at you and I think, I know Anthony can bench 225 for 5, I might say to you, I only want you to do it for 3. I want to be, but I think with the average person, be it male or female, that is in your adult group or that your personal training or whatever it is, if you say failure, the reps will double, and which means you're way past the 2 rep and reserve thing. And that's why I kind of always, like you, I said, sometimes I'll just say do as many as you can. Or I'll just keep I was like, I'll just keep progressive, PREing them, progressive resistance exercise. I just throw a little bit more on and okay, try that. And I'll say sometimes do somewhere between 6 and 10. Usually if I say between 6 and 10, they usually get 10. 90% of the time they'll do 10. So I think
Yeah.
you just have to be careful. And I think that's part of the problem with the APRE stuff and reps in reserve and a lot of these things. I think those are techniques that are valuable for really good lifters. And that when you start applying them into general fitness, they're probably not helping you.
I also think failure is risky as well. Obviously, on that last one to say, hey, like I don't do it for everybody. I do it really when I suspect that they're not lifting enough, and I want to make the decision. I need help making that decision, to be honest. Like, hey, should I go up another 2.5 pounds if we have those dumbbells available? Then I will. But they'll make it look like they're struggling, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to go up even the 2.5. Sometimes if I'm at 25 for a woman and she, 27 and a half can be a big deal for, some of my women. So, and even for some of my men, when we get up to a little heavier weight, I worry about it. Obviously, I want to make sure that they're comfortable with that weight. So it's tricky, but I worry about the failure as well. Cause I'm like, I don't want them getting hurt.
Well, that's why it's funny we talked about in our last staff meeting too about the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 rep thing too, because when you think, and I've said this 1,000 times, but if you go from 25 to 27, you went from 50 to 55. It's 10% increase. That's 30 pounds on a 300-pound bench. I think that's where people don't look at. I always try to get everybody think about percentage of increase versus the increase. What percentage does that represent? And that's why I think sometimes if someone's done 25 for 5, then it's like, hey, all right, let's do it for 6. If they've done it for 6, let's do it for 7. If they do it for 7, let's do it for 8. Like I had one of my clients, he's had a little bit of a back issue, and we were doing dumbbell bench press. When he was getting the 60s in and out of the rack, tweaked his back a little bit. And so I said, the other day, I said, just grab the 45s and try to do them for 15. Does it. Next time we did it, I said, grab the 45s again, see if you can get 20. Because all I want to do is lessen the weight that he's taking in and out of the rack, but I still want to find a way to push him. And the reality is, if you're pushing yourself, you can go out as far as 20. Look at the 1x20 research. If you go read the 1x20 research, people are getting stronger with 1x20. I guess I think that we oversimplify stuff, and that's why it was funny because the woman today, who was actually very nice as it went along, but she said, I thought what you said was kind of clickbaity. And then I went back and looked at it and I thought, it really wasn't. It just basically said that 10 reps is 77%. But I did say female clients because I am definitely aiming at that audience that is being told you got to lift heavy shit. That's all the time. Lift heavy shit, lift heavy shit. Women are getting that message, and I love that they're getting that message. I really do. Except I want to make sure that they don't really get that message. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I love the fact that you're going to try to pick up heavier weight, that you're going to push yourself, that you're going to go to failure. I don't really want to see kind of major multi-joint stuff. I don't want to see 3RM bench presses. I don't want to see 3RM back squats. I'm looking at that and thinking, hey, if you've got a 40 to 70-year-old client and you're doing that stuff, you are absolutely positively playing with fire.
And look, in her defense, when she said that about the female comment, I think, let's go back to the wooden comment that you just said, like, the kids are even more visual now. And so they're so used to on social media, just seeing something and like, that's it. Cool. Female clients only. And that's not your intention. That's what's good about kind of the podcast, obviously, is that we can kind of elaborate a little bit more. Not everybody's going to listen to it. But the problem is that they're looking at these really quick sound bites, and then you're going to get blamed for taking part of that. I'm guilty of it too. I'm always going to show the best parts of a little interview, but I'm not trying to do it for likes. I'm trying to get them to come listen to the show.
Okay.
So, but it's a tricky thing because, and then in the post, are you supposed to now explain, guys, just so you know, I'm saying this to female clients because the marketing to female clients is blah, blah, blah. Like you have to explain yourself every
Right.
time, it seems like.
And you can't, if I put that in the post, no one would read the post.
There you go.
Right? It's too long. Okay. It's too long. The font was too small. I couldn't see it. So you gotta kind of, if you want to call it clickbait, I guess, but you are clearly trying to get somebody, you want somebody to engage with the post, right? That is the purpose of social media. You want people to engage with the post. You want them to look at the post, potentially like the post, potentially share the post. And so in order to do that, you have to have a post that's interesting. I don't know how you can get around that. It's like, oh, I'm going to put up a really boring generic post and then I'm going to really hope that I get a lot of engagement and a lot of views and I increase, because I do want to increase my follower count.
Sure.
Everybody does, because if I increase my follower count, I'm affecting more people. I'm at 150,000 people now. That's great. That means I have the potential on any given day to affect 150,000 people. That's great. I want to get it to 160. I want to get it to 200, right? I'd like to get it to 250,000. But the reality is that's where we're at right now. The information is being exchanged on Instagram. It's being exchanged in podcasts. There's less and less reading. We've started to institute some reading at the staff meetings now because it's I told you that Bezos blueprint book that I was reading, he was talking about the fact that they would send out the memo before the meeting and everybody would be required to read the memo. Or actually, no, they'd get the memo right at the beginning of the meeting, first 20 minutes of the meeting, read the memo. So we've started to give people some reading during the meeting because otherwise, what we realize, there's certain people on your staff who won't read. And so if we have things that we want them to read, okay, give them 10 minutes or 15 minutes during the meeting and let them read those things.
Very cool. I like that. And it's interesting because my next topic was, and this will be an interesting conversation, is you posted trying to be contrarian question mark. Yes, you should squat and you should deadlift, but you don't and maybe shouldn't need to do either with the barbell. And yes, the spine moves, but that doesn't make make training it to be a mistake. I can't tell if some people are being sneaky, manipulative, or just dumb. And the interesting part is
I'm trying to be contrarian.
yeah. Like you're trying to be a little. Well, and by the way, you contrarian. A couple of people. It was an interesting post because a lot of people. Some people have had the definition of contrarian, and really, you're contrarian in a good way. Like you're opening up to think. Hey, I want to think a little bit differently. What if we did it this way? What if the way we did it was wrong? So in that way, you are contrarian. But then there's a kind of a different meaning because. Go back to social media where people are trying to be like create a separate response because of that.
Right there. And I think the difference is I am deliberately contrarian because I am trying to question the status quo. I'm trying to say, is the way that we're doing it the best way to do it? So I guess I'm as guilty of it as anybody. But I think there's other people who and maybe there's a better word than contrarian. Maybe it's just disagreeable. But I think they just want to disagree to be on the other side. I think they're just that type of person that no matter what the argument is, I'm sure everybody has a friend like that, right? No matter what the argument is, they're going to jump on the other side and they're going to try to argue the other point. And my problem was, and usually my posts in the morning are reactive to something that I've seen or read. And there was just another one of those. Somebody had said in the comments of another post, hey, everybody's just got a deadlift. I've seen great results from people getting their deadlift to 300. And I just was kind of like, and I always go back. Like I go back and I look and I see, okay, how old are they? How do they train? And invariably, when you get these kind of posts, they're young and they powerlift. It's all the time. And they're the ones that are what I would say deliberately contrarian because what I'm saying is something that they take really personally. They think, okay, he's talking to me. And the reality is I am talking to them. I listened again to it. I was listening to another podcast, and one of the people on the podcast said, Clifton Harsky actually was on the podcast, and he had said, I find myself thinking more and more like Mike Boyle all the time, or I find myself agreeing with Mike Boyle all the time. And he didn't say it necessarily in a complimentary way, but he just said it in the sense of, as I get older, I start to see why Mike Boyle says the things that he says. And it just made me laugh. I actually sent him a message on Instagram with the quote because I think it's funny when you realize that I always, as I've said, people come around. They get a little older. They start to realize, wow, I can't. I always thought I was going to be able to train this way forever, but I can't. And suddenly I find myself kind of Mike Boiling this thing, for lack of a better word, where suddenly I'm thinking, oh, I got to find a little more joint friendly exercise, or maybe I won't do that for a heavy double. Maybe I'll do it for a 10 or whatever it is. And I do think, and I've said this before, and it's probably incredibly whatever cocky conceited statement, but I always think people will eventually come around to the way that I think. If they stay in the profession long enough, they will start looking and going, okay, I understand why this guy was saying what he was saying and doing what he was doing, because you you start to see people get hurt. You start to see things not go right. And then you start looking in and you have those little epiphanies where you go, oh, I kind of get it. I see what he means now in terms of, yeah, that did kind of come back to bite me in the ass just the way that he said it was gonna. And it does. It's reality.
Yeah, and I think part of it is your the way you've kind of, Alan College Grove's been there, done that, still doing it, and it's pretty rare to be your age and to be doing this for this long, to still have the facility, to also have like the almost like remote training that you used to do like once in a while for the Olympics, right? The Olympic girls, for the different teams, because you didn't get to see them all year. Some of them you did, some of you did, but then you got to see a couple seasons in with the Red Sox, and you had a bunch of seasons, but you still had the facility, and then you had to move over to personal training, and then you went over to group, and then you went through the pandemic just like everybody else. So you've been that business owner, but you've also been the strength coach in a college setting, in a pro setting. So I think a lot of times, when you've been through it like you have in a lot of different ways, it's like, okay, I've been there, I've done that, but I'm still learning and I'm still doing it. So
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's funny. And somebody the other day, I was listening to somebody else and they said, well, everything Mike Boyle does, there's a business reason behind it. And again, it was said in a negative tone, but I was kind of like, well, of course, yeah, everything I do, there's a business reason behind it because I'm in business. Like we're in the business of training people. So we're always going to think about what's the best way to do that. I mean, one, the best way to do it, yes, we try to make money. Absolutely. Our goal is not to go out of business. Our goal is not to not make money. So that would be pretty obvious. But also, our goal is to not get anybody hurt because that's not good for business, right? If somebody gets hurt, whenever anybody says, oh, I went to Mike's facility and I got hurt, that's not a good ad. And so I just think it's I don't know, odd, funny, interesting, however we want to look at it, when people again they make that comment kind of as if it's negative, and if it's like, for me, all he cares about is money. And I always say you could talk to anybody that knows me and they would tell you the last thing I care about is money. But I do really care about running a good business. I do really care about having a place that's both safe and smart. And I've been saying that over and over again. I want it to be safe. I want it to be smart. I want people to be getting results. I want people to not be getting hurt. Why would I not want that, right? Why would anybody not want that? And that's the part that I don't get with a lot of people, is that they don't, because I always think if it's not safe, then it's also not smart. I think that's the way that you have to look at it. So you've got to think that smart just naturally follows safe. Like if I design this with the idea that I don't want somebody to get hurt, then that's smart. That's good for business. We're going to make more money. All of the above. It's kind of like, hey, we're checking boxes here, like one after another after another. And I also look at it and I think with people, why would they not look at our model and think, gee, these guys, they have a really good business. They've got a good community. They've got happy clients. They've got kids that are training, they've got athletes that are making it in professional sports, and they're making money, and they've been in business for a really long time. Someone was talking the other day about business and saying it's really unusual in the fitness business for somebody to be around for 28 years like you guys have been around. And I'm like, yeah, like why would people not be thinking, oh, I should copy that model instead of copying a model that's failed repeatedly? And that's the strange part is that people are more likely to look and say, oh, that failed. I'm going to do that versus that succeeded. And I'm going to do that. And that's why for me, we talk about like, hey, I'm studying Bezos and I'm studying Warren Buffett and I'm studying Steve Jobs. I'm studying people that have impacted their industries and been really financially successful because that's just smart. Why would you not? Why would I not look and think, hey, what made Apple special? What made Berkshire Hathaway special? What made Amazon special? Right? I mean, not that obviously Mike Boyle strength and conditioning is not at the level of any of those companies, but I would look at it and think, I would like to be as well regarded as those companies. I would like people to look and think, wow, that was a really good business model that worked. What's wrong with that?
And that's just an excuse, just a way to kind of, an insecure kind of comment about, yeah, it's just for the money. Mike, let's just finish up with this deadlift pattern versus barbell deadlift. Is it the exercise or the pattern that matters? Because you were doing a feet elevated sumo, and you try to get 120 for 10 reps means you can go to unilateral. You had some good responses on that. John Russin had a nice response about, no, it doesn't matter. We're just trying to get people better. Like people need to stop being so emotionally attached. And that goes back to the contrarian thing as well. Right. So just talk about this idea about the patterns, what you felt like people commented on.
It's the same thing. If people say, it's like everybody should squat and deadlift. Agree. Everybody should move through the squat pattern. Everybody should move through the deadlift pattern, which means everybody should pick something up off the ground with their hands, and everybody should squat up and down under load. The problem is, again, looking at the patterns versus the exercises. I could flip that same thing and say, but everybody shouldn't back squat and everybody shouldn't straight bar deadlift. And that's what I was trying to illustrate in that point, is that we've got to look at the pattern versus the exercise. And I think people they're attached to the exercise when they should be attached to the pattern. Because I look at, do I want people to be able to pick stuff up off the floor? Yep, absolutely, positively. I think that's really important. Do I need somebody to straight bar deadlift 300? No. No interest in that at all. Same thing with squatting. Do I need somebody to be able to get up and down out of a chair, up and down out of a toilet, whatever it is? Absolutely. Do I need somebody to back squat 225? Absolutely not. Don't need to do it. So, and that's the problem, as I said, these these broad statements embolden, as I said, the starting strength people, the powerlifting people, the go heavy or go home people, the West Side people. Like there's all these people out there that are attached to a system. And that's what I think about us. And maybe I have, again, a superiority complex. I don't know, but I look at it and think our system is better because we're not attached to any particular version of the exercise. We're attached to getting somebody better in those patterns so that it positively affects their activities of daily living. And I said on the Peter Tia podcast, right? Because people criticized me about, oh, you're not gonna be able to get up and down off the toilet. And I said, you're never gonna piggyback someone in to take a shit. Like that's not gonna happen, right? You don't have to be able to squat down with somebody of your own body weight on your back. That is not a requirement. You just need to be able to squat down and stand up. So there becomes a point at which you say, what's the risk benefit of this particular activity, whatever that is? And I think you always need to be looking at that client and saying, what's the risk benefit? If I'm talking about my college athletes, I have a very different view of risk benefit than I do with my adult clients who are in their 50s. And even if I'm talking about my established college athlete or my established pro athletes versus my college athletes trying to make it versus my high school athletes, I have a very different risk benefit kind of view for those people.
But it is funny because going back to the toilet analogy, people overestimate things. I'm a guy that everybody around me, they're always like, can you help us move this? Can you help us move that? I'm the guy, and I'm, because I'm jacked, but seriously, I'm the biggest guy around in my, my family and like maybe the building. Mike, I never have to pick anything up over like 60, 70 pounds. So it's,
No one says to you, Anthony, can you grab the refrigerator by yourself and take it down the stairs?
yeah. It's the same thing with getting up, like getting up at the floor. I have a woman, she's 78, who I train at my my development. This morning I had her, and one of the things we do is 3 to 5 times she does get-ups without any weight. Just gets up. I don't give her a technique. I did in the very beginning a little bit like, hey, let's try this or try that. But I make her get up and down off the floor 3 to 5 times every time. I don't have weight in her hand. I don't need it. I just need her to get up if something happens. I want her to be able to have that mobility. And so we work on some of those things. So I think it's very similar. We kind of overestimate what they're going to need in those situations.
Right. Years ago, I called that the elder get up, and Pat Van Galen got mad at me. But it's true in terms of, I think it was Dan John said in one of his seminars that you could tell how old somebody was by the number of touches it took for them to get off the floor.
Well, there's a whole test about that, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I thought he's right. I mean, it should be just like a Turkish get up. You should be able to roll to your elbow, put your hand down, get up on one knee, stand up. Boom. You should be able to smoothly do that. And then you try to watch some of your older clients and you think, oh my God, loss of function is extreme.
Yeah, I think there's that piece when they roll over to try to get up on their hands and knees, and then they forget about trying to get up on that, really the split squat, right? How can they get up? Or even some kind of like a baby squat where they have both hands on the floor and then they lift their hips up and then they like the hinge. Right?
I had some people that used to like inchworm in terms of they'd roll over, they'd get on all fours and they still couldn't get up. And then they'd kind of, inchworm their hands closer to their feet, and eventually I used to look and think, my God. But it's that knee flexion, hip flexion, like you said, that split squat pattern really makes a difference. The thing that I've realized, and I do it all the time now when I'm making my fires at my house, in the morning it's hard for me to get out of a split squat with my right leg in front of me. Much harder than with my left. And what you realize is that it goes back kind of to the PRI thing. All the right-handed people are super left leg dominant. You don't even know it. But if you did it, you would start to realize, oh my God, I get up 99% of the time, I'll get up left leg first. I will do that left leg split squat to stand way more than right leg. So I literally switch legs now all the time and try to do the right leg version. Because after I had my surgery, I was shocked how I couldn't get off the ground. Same thing. I was like, oh, this is hard. So
yeah, there's other things too. Like I have a left big toe, like lots of arthritis in there. I have a problem, like even doing a back, that back lunge with the left leg going back because I can't really have that flexion. But I could skate though, so that's really important.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. All right, Coach. Well, thanks for doing this. We got one more episode this year. It'll be our end of the year interview. We'll talk about some of the things that maybe you have learned or things you've changed. So I'll give you a little heads up on that. It'll be in a couple weeks. But
right.
Thanks for doing this. Have a great holiday, and we'll talk to you then.
Thanks.